covered that. And that's it, thank you. So here, what will we talk about? New Year's resolutions. Anybody make a resolution? Nobody did? Everybody did?
Everybody.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Personal strategic plan. And then we'll talk about business strategic planning. We're going to talk about startups and entrepreneurs and getting into middle-sized companies and then finally bigger companies. So that's what we'll talk about. And really, it's about plan. Is it a plan or is it a wish? I see it all the time. Okay, let's, I can change this, I guess. Want to do that for me? So, New Year's resolutions, here's some. Any of these ring a bell?
Yes.
And was it a wish? Is it a wish? Did you have a plan? I wish I could spend less. I wish I could lose weight. I wish I could. I wish I could. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to whatever. Get organized. Get home. These are all wishes, aren't they? Do you have a plan for it? What's the first step?
Right.
And what's the second step? And in a week's time, what do you look for? Have you done anything? Was there any steps? Was there any milestones? Was there anything that you're going to do in 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter? How about at the middle of the year? Did you look? Okay, mostly resolutions are gone by the first week, right? That's a good thing to say, but nothing happens. I have a little picture on the bottom there because this is to remind me that resolutions are kind of like babies. Fun to make, hard to maintain.
There you go. I'll remember that one.
Personal plan. And is this the roadmap for you? Do you see any bumps in the road? How far can you see ahead before it turns into what? We don't know. Is that your plan? Does it turn to the left? Does it go straight? What's your plan? So these are kind of things when you think about personally. Where am I going? What's going to happen? So here's personal strategic plan. Where do we start? Here's where we start, right here. Right? What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to save money. We're going to do something. We start right here. And we make something, and maybe it's not all these things, maybe it's just one thing. But that's where we usually start personally. We usually don't even get here. What's the action, milestones, measures, or costs associated with that plan or that wish that we have? But look at what drives it. Personal philosophy. We want to do things based upon our culture, our parents, where we came from, those kinds of things. You want to be remembered for something? Usually that doesn't come in your New Year's resolutions. And a mission statement, who you are, why you exist, where are you going? Core values. Recognize those?
Boy Scout.
Boy Scouts. Yeah. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I memorized it as a scout leader, and my kids did too. So usually those aren't your core values. Maybe some of them, but have you ever thought about your core values? What's my values? What do companies do that a lot? They try to figure out what their core values are, and then they plan around those things. So, do you have a personal board of directors or a business advisor, somebody to help you with your New Year's resolution or your personal strategic plan? I don't know. Maybe you should. Who's going to keep you accountable? Who's going to say, what did you do? What's your plan? And then, do you have maintenance or performance checkups? What are you doing in 1 week? What are you doing in 1 year? 6 months? Anybody have all that? You have it all. Cool. Let's go to the next slide. Here's a chart that I use sometimes with startups or entrepreneurs. And it's called a business model canvas. And kind of on one page, you can describe what you're going to do. So you start here. What do you do? Okay, well, I'm a carpenter, for instance. And I can do carpentry. Okay, so what? How is that a business? Who do you help over here? So if you look at that, who do you help? And how do you interact with who do you help? So if you take these things and write down, ask yourself those questions. You can then figure out, okay, so how do I interact? How do you reach them? What's the distribution channels? Over here, who will help you? Who's your partners? Or who's your reference people? What are the key activities? What's the key resources that you need? Those are kind of describing the startup business. I once had an inquiry from a gal who said, I'm going to have transportation for people that need to go to the doctor. Cool. I said, that's great. And you know, it costs a lot to do that. So I'm going to charge $10. And I need a loan to get a van so I can run my business. Cool. So I said, oh, what's your revenue margin? I'm going to charge $10. Good. And take them to the doctor, take them to the hospital, yeah. And then what? Oh, I'll wait for them. Okay. And then what? Take them home. For $10? Yeah. Cool. So I said, that's in here, how much will you make? And then how much will it cost? Have you thought about paying off the van? Insurance on the van, gas on the van? Are you going to drive? You know, what if you have 10 people at once? Are you going to drive all 10 people? How many of those can you do per day at $10 to the doctor and back? These are all questions. So once you answer these questions, sometimes the answer is obvious. Okay, this business model is not going to work. Or you're going to lose money doing it. But if you go through this pretty good chart on one page, just to canvas things, say, what am I going to do? You can answer these questions. It sometimes leads you to ideas about either getting a better plan, or modifying your plan, or not doing what you're going to do, something else. Okay, next. So here's a checkup list from a book called Traction. Anybody read that book? Anybody ever heard the book Traction? It's by Gino Wickman. And his book I read many years ago, and I thought, wow, this is simple stuff. Way more simple than I do. Why would I even address this stuff? But then after a year or so, I found out it's kind of catching on. A lot of small businesses are implementing the Traction model. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And here's a checkup list, and go through this list. There's 2 pages here. And let's go through this list, and you tell me for your business how many of these questions you can answer yes to. So you have a clear vision for your business. Keep track of this. See how many of these you can answer yes to for your business. Your core values are clear. Did you have them? Are they clear? And are you hiring if you have people? Reviewing, rewarding, and firing people because they do or do not have your core values? It's pretty harsh. Our core business is clear. Our 10-year target is clear. Maybe it's a 5-year target. Maybe it's a 1-year target. Our target market is clear and described. Do we differentiate our business with others or our competitors? We have a proven process for doing business. The people in our organization are the right people. Our accountability chart is clear, especially if there's a partnership or if you have another person working with you. Who does what and how do you get tangled up? Get to the lawyers when you do. Right? Everybody's in the right seat means that sometimes in businesses there's a lot of people who are, especially family businesses, who are in the business because they're part of the family, but are they in the right position? Do they have the right responsibilities, or are they just there? Are they in the right seat in the organization chart? Next slide. So leadership team is open and honest and demonstrates a high level of trust. Everyone has rocks. Rocks means goals in the book Traction, like initiatives or those kinds of things. Everybody's engaged in weekly, regular meetings. This is meetings about what are we doing as a business, not crisis meetings, but these are meetings. What are we doing? Are we keeping our goals and initiatives in front of us? All teams clearly identify, discuss, and solve key issues. You know, we have issues always. How do we solve those issues? We usually have more issues than we have time to solve them. How do we decide which we work on? Systems and processes are documented, understood. Even if it's a small, simple documentation, what do we do? This and this and this. What's our business process? we find customers, we do what? We finally deliver. What, is it a 3-step process, or what is the process? And a scorecard for metrics. You all have metrics for your business. You have things that you want to accomplish. Do you keep those in front of you? Everyone in this organization is accountable to hit at least one number, and we have a budget and monitoring it regularly. So how many got 18 out of 18? That's pretty much, usually the answer for this is around 30%. Yes, when you start. Okay, next. So here's, in the traction book, here's a, actually it's 2 pages, they call it a 1-page planner. So we go through this and say, what are our core values for our business starting out? And there's 5 of them there. Anybody recognize what company might have those as core values? That's the core values for 3 of them.
For who?
3 of them. At least it was at one time. They may have changed now, it's a new year. But core focus, what's the purpose and cause and passion? What's our niche? 10-year target, usually a financial target. What do we want to reach in 10 years? And some people do 5 years, some people do 3 years. Usually in planning purposes today, not many people can see more than a year out. So they plan for a year. This program also allows you to do 3-year and 1 year, and I'll show you on the next page. But this is a kind of a far-reach goal. Where are you planning to go? Or are you just going to wait for the phone to ring? And your marketing strategy, who's on your list of people that you need to reach? What's your target list? Uniques of the marketing strategy and proven process. And do you have a guarantee with your customers? Do you guarantee that what? If you mess up, what's your guarantee? You don't pay. What? How do you keep yourself from being sued? Really? 3-year picture. What's the revenue profit measures, and what does it look like? The next page. I know this is kind of like taking a drink out of a fire hydrant, but I'm just going to go through this stuff and show you what's available. Here's the second page of that, 1-year plan and the rocks and the issues. So when you go through this, you say, what are the goals for the year for the business? And then what's the goals for the quarter? What's the first quarter goals? So you want to have that list in place so that you can assign that to someone, and I usually call that the champion. Who's the champion? Means that may not be the person that is responsible for it, but it's the person that you go to find out what's happening with this goal. And they might have a team of people. So the champion then would be the who over here, and the rocks for the quarter, and then issues of things that need to be solved on a weekly basis when you have weekly meetings.
What are you defining as a rock?
It's a goal.
It's a goal.
It's
okay.
just the definition of, some companies call it initiatives, some call it strategies, some call it goals, some call it rocks. Rocks is a term that's used by the book Traction.
Okay.
That's why I put it up.
Okay.
I don't know where that word came from. So maybe it's you carry a rock around, I don't know, guessing. They probably know. Issues. In the issues list, the way to look at issues in this writer's exercise, and I agree with it, is that if you have, let's say you have 10 issues and you have a meeting to solve the issues, what do we usually do? It's like our to-do list. What do we usually do with our to-do list? We find out we have 10 things on the list and we say, well, I can get that one done, wipe that out, I can get that done, wipe that out. Or if you're like my wife, she has a list of to-dos for me. And when I do something extra, it gets on the list and gets crossed off to credit for doing something. But the best way to do it is to look at the 10 things and say, what's the most critical here? What's the most important issue to work on? What's the top 3? Let's work on those. And that's why in this approach, the meeting approach once a week is to say, what are our issues and what's the top 3? And work on those first. And if you can get those done, then you get 3 more. So don't take the easy ones and leave the hard ones that are maybe the most critical for the business on the list, on the list, on the list. Okay, next page. There's also a system called Gazelles that is, they have a 1-page strategic planner. And Gazelles is a program written, a book called Scaling Up, How a Few Companies Make It and Why the Rest Don't. And they have a one-page planner also, a little more robust than the traction planner. And a lot of people in roundtables use the Gazelle system for planning purposes. So let's go to big businesses now. Here's a little thing I clipped out of the paper. Sales are dropping. Now maybe that's what the banker says. And then the CEO says, sales are dropping, and he says, our plan is to invent some sort of doohickey that everybody wants to buy. That's our strategy, that's our plan. Right? Then what? Roll it down to the rest of the people. So the visionary leadership work is done. How long will your part take? I think that's what we do. Not many big businesses do that, but not others have. Next one. So here's something about business strategy planning. And a lot of times when I do planning with companies, it's a senior team gets together and they do a plan, facilitate the plan. It's a lot of consternation and arguing and this and that, giving and taking and all everything, and finally you come up with a plan. And so a lot of times he says, do you have the initiatives? Well, yes, 91%. We don't know if they're strategic or not. And what percent of the people clearly understand the strategy? Well, even the executive management sometimes don't understand what they have come up with. And middle management even less, and line employees even less. So go to a company and say, what's the company strategy? Well, if you're in the chain business making chains, they might say, well, we make chains. But what is it that you're going to do to help either grow or whatever your plan is for the business? And they don't know what those initiatives are. What are we going to do? And how does it affect me? Usually the executives who do the planning, they sometimes remember what happened in the planning sessions. So they know, okay, I don't know exactly what all happened. I know this is more important than that. I know this is more important than that because I was there when we struggled to figure out what to do. They don't pass it on very well, though, as you can see here. Next.
How should you pass it on?
Well, where's our communication expert? The way of passing it on is to make sure that they're clear, first of all, and then to communicate to all employees. Here's what you do. Here's how, let's say it's a department head. This is what initiatives might affect your department. This is what your department needs to do to satisfy or help satisfy that initiative. And then those constant weekly meetings. Not many companies do that. They don't have weekly meetings to say, how are we doing against our goals? They have weekly meetings, but not for the strategy part. So once you get into the process of doing it and solving the issues that come up when you talk about that, then that's the way people keep that in their head. What are we trying to accomplish here? It's not just the humdrum day-to-day operations and we have meetings because there's crises. We have meetings because we have a plan in place, we have a goal to reach, and we're concentrating on that. As well as the other meetings, of course, but that's the question.
I'm just curious, are there any companies that you're aware of that actually do share their goals and plans to a certain extent all the way down the line?
Yeah, they do. A lot of companies do. What they don't share is their financials. They don't share all their financials usually. But they share the initiatives and the steps and the actions and plans of things to help them accomplish the financials. I'll show you in a couple slides from now how that comes into play also.
Would this apply to a nonprofit model?
It could be for nonprofits, yeah. Planning doesn't always necessarily mean just financial. What are we going to do as a nonprofit? What's our initiatives for the year? And I'll show you, I got another slide come up that reminds me about how many initiatives. I like to say that we have 3 or 4 initiatives. Does that mean I have 3 minutes left? I gotta go. Let's skip this slide. Let's say we want to have a lot of initiatives, then the idea is you're going to have 3 or 4 initiatives and not 25. You can keep the 3 or 4 things in mind, but not 25. Okay, here's a pretty complicated business strategy formulation chart. And I use this because a lot of times in businesses you do the internal assessment and you do the business environment assessment, which includes these things. and the internal assessment, which includes these things, then you have, that leads to strategic factors, opportunities, options. You can do option evaluation and see which of these opportunities really could become options or not. And then finally you get your strategic initiatives. A lot of companies, when they do planning, they want to start right here. What are we going to do? Well, let's do this, this, and this. But they don't take into account the background information and analysis to get to what's most important. Next. Okay, I was talking about financial. A lot of people do financial planning, and they call it strategic planning. But another way to look at it is the balanced scorecard approach, which is by Robert Kaplan. Balanced scorecard is a strategic management system. And take a look at the business from 4 different perspectives. What about, let's leave financial alone for a minute and say, if we had to include or do internal business processes, what would we do? If we looked at the business from the customer and stakeholder and satisfaction point of view, what would we do? If we looked at the business from the organizational capacity point of view, what will we do? And then that gives us a whole set of options and objectives, not only financial. So for the nonprofits, you might say, well, what are all these things? And what are we going to do to help our business, our nonprofit? And then you get the strategy map, we get performance measures and targets and initiatives out of that discussion. Next page. So when you do that, go ahead, 1 minute left. I thought you had a question. When you do that, here, these need to tell the story. Balanced scorecard, the initiatives and measures that you have need to fit together. So an organizational capacity dimension needs to lead to the process, or the process then leads to financial, or the process leads to customer dimension. All these things need to fit together to tell the story of what you're going to do. Next page. I got to go faster. I got to get this fast. If you have too many initiatives, what are you going to do? Here's a chart that says, for implementation, it's easy or it's difficult, and what's the strategic impact? So I did this with a company just recently. They had 9 initiatives, and I said, how are we going to break that down to a lower number? Let's do this type of analysis and see if we can, if they're easy and they have little or no impact, then maybe we could do it. But if they're hard and they have little or no impact, maybe we could throw it out. Just a way of prioritizing. Next. Develop action plans. Okay, if you have a wish for your plan, your personal plan or business plan, then here's the way to detail that out. What's the measure, when you're due, who's the champion, task, due date, and responsibility and resources. Next slide. Okay, go fast. So here's managing the plan. You're doing a personal plan, here's what you need to do. If you're an entrepreneur, here's what you need to do. And if you have a business, strategic planning, you can have a facilitated plan or C-teams or quarterly meetings or all of the above. Next. That's it. Wow. I'm Bill Kruger and I approve this message.